Baseball in the Steel City with Rob Biertempfel from The Athletic. Diamond Diehards is on. Joe Rizzo here bringing you baseball along with the dog, Jeff Healy. It's now our second year of Diamond Diehards. It's the first, well, the last show was kind of the first show of the second year, but this is the first show since the first year anniversary celebration, and we are growing. We thank you and need your continued support. Follow us at Diamond Diehards, basically everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, TikTok, LinkedIn. We're everywhere, if you can believe that. Watch the shows. If you're a live streamer and you're watching us now, we appreciate it. If you're watching this at any point, we appreciate it. Or just listen if you want. Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you find podcasts. Diamond Diehards is there. FMS Graphics is a family-owned, family-run business. For 50 years, they've evolved, and today they are the one-stop shop for your printing and promotional needs. FMSgraphics.com. FMSgraphics.com for all your printing and promotional needs. Rob Biertempfel is a Steel City staple. He has been around the block, not just covering the Pirates, but covering a lot of different stuff these days. He covers the Pirates for the Athletic. So we're going to get into all things Pittsburgh with Rob in just a mere moment. But as you know, if you listen to the show, or as you don't know, if you're new to us, and we appreciate you being there, the way we usually kick it off is with our veteran emeritus, Jeff the Dog Healy, kicking it off with Veteran of the Day. Dog?
All right, thanks, Riz, and welcome, Rob. So, Veteran of the Day, always special. I say special every day, which I've sort of finally picked up on. But this one's a little extra special, as we'd sort of say. This one is actually suggested by our guest, Rob, that it is his dad, Bob Biertempfel, was a medic during the Cold War, so served during the Cold War over in Europe. Back then, they were facing long odds against a huge Soviet army sitting across the way there. So a lot of stress and a lot of tough times back then during the Cold War. So some of those guys, get overlooked at times, and that's not right. They actually helped hold the line in Europe all those many decades, and kept the Cold War from getting hot. So great service there. Medic is obviously always much appreciated across history, right? That's always the cool guy in every military movie is Doc or whatever else. They're always a pretty good character. So I would say, Rob, on behalf of everyone, thank you to your father for his service. So Bob Biertempfel, U.S. Army medic, Cold War, European Command. Thank you for your service.
And we bring in Rob, or if you've been on the live stream, you've seen him already. But if you're merely just listening, like us mere mortals, so Rob, I call you a Steel City staple. Why don't you give the folks, so we're Jersey guys, and a lot of these shows end up being about the Mets and the Yankees, and inordinately others about like the Cardinals, and then of course like the Dodgers, as you might expect. But we haven't done too much on the Pirates, and we haven't done too much, digging around in our demographic to see how many people from Pittsburgh we have listening, besides our old pals, Dog, the Whitties. I'm sure they're on. They're going to check this out. So Bill and Katie, hi. So to give our audience a little bit of background, and let's jump into some Pirate talk.
Well, background on me, I've been at the Athletic for my third year now. Getting a little feedback. But before that, I worked newspapers in Pittsburgh for, a lot of years, since the early 90s. And like you said, I covered a lot of things. I covered Big Ten football, covered some odds and ends. I did some boxing, covered a couple heavyweight title fights. But most of my work, and especially for the past 15, 20 years or so, has been Pirates. And a few good years in 2013, 14, 15, and a whole bunch of really stinky, cruddy, awful years where they didn't win. And now we're kind of back to the stinky, awful, cruddy part of it, where they're not winning again. I think their window maybe opens in about 4 or 5 years. We can get to that in a bit, though. But yeah, that's kind of where I am. I'm a Pittsburgh native. Went to Penn State along with a ton of people from Jersey and Philly. You were either from Pittsburgh, Jersey, or Philly when I went there in the 80s. So I know we were coming from that. My daughter's roommate, she's a grad student there, is from Jersey. So yeah, the accent, if you can tolerate my accent, that from Northside Pittsburgh accent, I can get by with yours as well. We can get this done.
Well, I got to say, my block is like a Penn State block. My neighbor, Dr. Ron, he's just I don't have to do any draft prep about the Penn State guys because as a Giant fan, I know. I'm like, Dr. Ron, how's this guy? How's that guy? He was overjoyed when we got Saquon. He's like, oh, Saquon's going to be here. So, and there's like there's Penn State all up and down my block. And I don't live in like a city. Like I live in, it's just like it's a suburban block, and it's just Lions all over the place.
Yeah, we tend to stand out. We're kind of like that. We're kind of, well, I guess I can say we're kind of obnoxious about it, but you know, it's not always a bad thing. So a little tricky sometimes being a Penn Stater here in Pittsburgh. There's some college here in Pittsburgh. I forget what it's called, but they have a lot of fans as well. But we have a few more.
So you've had, like, I'll tell you, the Pirates have been a pirate, a leaky ship, a leaky pirate ship. I have a funny one that I'm going to throw at you to start with here. So back about, I would say like 2007, 2008, thereabout. Yeah, it was like 2007, maybe 2006, something like that. Right in that area. I was working, and I used to go into the city on occasion, and my buddy Charles and I would meet up, and we were remote workers then, so our home base was in Illinois, and we would have our client in the city, and we would meet up like 2 or 3 times a week, and in this dungeon, and there was just nothing to talk about, right? So he's a baseball guy, wasn't really pledged so much to the Yankees, so much to the Mets, just like baseball. And at the time, as a Yankee fan, I would say, well, it's they had won so many times in that span. Of course, we didn't know that it was going to be once in the next 20 years starting then, but it was like they had the high payroll, they had all these players, and it was like a relief if they won. It sort of like was still good. I mean, I'm not complaining, but it's not like the same as when you're expected to win, it doesn't feel as good as when you're sort of not expected to win. So what we decided to do, the two of us, was we said, we're going to adopt a team, and we're going to take the worst team with the worst outlook, and we're going to adopt them as our second team. And then when they go on to win the World Series, we're going to be like, hey, we adopted this team when they were nothing. And it came down to the Pirates and the Royals, and we picked the Royals.
Yeah, good move.
Now, how do you think that was when I was at Dog's house in 2015 with my wife, the Met fan? I'm sitting here saying the Royals get this far away in 2014. The Yankees are out of it, right? They're not even contesting in it. And they get this far out in the 2014 World Series against the Giants, which is one of the great World Series ever played, and the way it ended and everything like that. And then the next year they got to face the Mets. So I'm like, well, it's either a lose-lose or a win-win. I don't know what it is, but I picked them instead of the Pirates. Rob, if I had picked the Pirates, this might be you'd be too big time for us. We wouldn't even be able to get you on at this point.
You'd still be waiting for that World Series, though.
Yeah, right.
So, somehow Riz went after both the Pirates and the Mets in the same setup there. I'm like, well said. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a nice thing with the whole Pirates. Like, oh, he's gonna talk to Royals, and then he throws the Mets under the bus arbitrarily. Yet again.
I wasn't throwing the Mets under the bus. I was rooting. You witnessed me rooting for the Mets in your house.
You do it by instinct. I understand.
I was rooting for the Mets in your house out of respect and deference to you.
There we go.
It's a little similar to what I did back in the day as well when I was still in high school in the early 80s, like WOR on this new thing called cable television that all the kids were watching. And I adopted the Mets because you couldn't turn around without seeing the Mets. And, and they had a guy named Mookie, and how cool was that? So, I watched the Mets, and then, they go and had that great run, and then they become real jagoffs with the Pirates in the late 80s. And, whenever the Pirates kind of stunk but they were just starting to get a little bit better. And they set a goal of winning, I forget it was like 20 of their last 40 games or something like that. I remember talking to Bob Walker about it one time. And he was like, everybody just kind of laughed because that's never going to happen. And then it happened. And I remember there was somebody some player from the Mets heard about it. It became like bulletin board material. And the next year, 88 maybe, Pirates opened at home against the Mets. And I remember I bought like a T-shirt from some guy standing on a street corner, and on the front it just had like the obviously bootleg Pirates logo, and on the back was like some little kid wearing a Pirates hat peeing on the Mets logo. And I thought, hey, this is great. So that's my Mets Pirates connection story thing for you.
Dog's gonna have to come up fire in here. By the way,
oh, no, yeah, the Pirates are they're sort of like one of those teams, right? Like you just have to, like, anybody who's rooting and like is so dedicated for that franchise. I mean, you have to respect it, right? They've got a great tradition, and it's it's tough. It's tough to see from the outside, right? I mean, just how much talent has kind of gone through Pittsburgh and how they're not able to hold on to it and stuff. That's a real problem in baseball. We talked a little bit, I think, over the summer about that with the Pirates and stuff as well, right? Where you just you have that talent there. It's almost reminiscent of the Expos, right? Back in the day, same thing where they'd have talent come up and they just weren't able to afford financially to keep the teams around. And it's tough to see as a baseball fan. To have all that talent.
It makes it pretty challenging. I mean, I talked to a lot of people who are still big fans, and I asked them why or how. And it's not easy, and there's a lot of suffering. But like kind of what you guys are saying though, when you do have that, when the planets align and leprechauns ride magical unicorns down rainbows, and the Pirates have a winning season. It feels so much better, and that's great. But yeah, the economics of the game and the business model that ownership has, it's it's a longer shot than ever, I think, of them winning it all. I mean, maybe now that, especially if baseball does that, everybody gets in the playoffs this year like they did last year, although the Pirates still didn't make it. They have a shot of at least getting in around, and who knows what can happen. And that was always the weird. When Neil Huntington was still the general manager, he talked about just getting into the tournament, and then who knows what could happen. And I always thought that's kind of a strange way to build your team, where you essentially just cross your fingers and hope for the best, as opposed to let's put a team of guys out there who are going to kick your butt. But that was their plan.
Well, listen, I think we're off to a good start here, because completely uncoordinated, I've worn a yellow shirt and the dog has worn a black shirt.
There you go.
So we've covered that. I did mention something to Dog. I'm like, I'm gonna go for like yellow, yellow and black or something, and I went black T-shirt underneath.
Oh, well, there you go. See, yeah, black.
So I'm in pirate mode. And in my fantasy league, my first round pick was Ke'Bryan Hayes.
Good pick.
So I was a little disappointed to see that after his home run on opening day, that he went right to the injured list. But hopefully it's not a big thing. So let's have a little chat about him, and then I want to try to work in, because the one thing that you guys didn't mention, so that the Pirates do have, is the ballpark, which we'll talk about your feature about the ballpark as well. So let's talk about Ke'Bryan Hayes, then we'll talk about the ballpark, and then I'm going to try to tie this into something else.
Okay. Well, Ke'Bryan, yeah, you're right. He's on the 10-day IL with a inflammation in his left wrist. Is how baseball is these days. That's as much info as you'll get. And they say he heard it while swinging a bat, and it was like somehow they gave some sort of roundabout explanation of the knob of the bat catching in his hand or something, which I can see how that would happen if he twisted the wrong way, and he did it on a foul pop apparently, and then kind of re-aggravated it when he had to dive back to first on a pickoff. And I want to say it was Arrieta who was pitching that day for the Cubbies, And I was immediately on his way left. I'm thinking, if I'm Arrieta here, I'm throwing over a couple of 5 more times to try to get, him out of the game. Really mess up that wrist. And sure enough, Arrieta threw over a couple more times in that stretch. And by the 3rd inning, Cabrine was out and on his way to the IL. But he should be back. They're not expecting the IL stint to go beyond the 10 days, and the Pirates need him because he is, in a lot of ways, their most electric player. Probably their no, I don't want to say probably. He is their best defensive player. He's shows every sign of becoming their offensive spark plug. He is their most marketable player. You cannot listen to a radio ad or turn on the TV or listen to the game or even think about the words Pirates, even if you're thinking of the Pirates of the Caribbean. You're still going to have Greg Brown, my good buddy, the broadcaster, jump out and talk about Young Hayes, because that's really what the franchise, the front office, the marketing department, the ticket salespeople, everybody is putting all of their hopes and prayers on the shoulders of this 25, 26, 20 something year old kid. And so far, he has handled it magnificently. Doesn't seem flustered out there. He's poised out there. He did not look like a rookie. From the moment he finally got called up on September 1st, it was that first game. I remember that we were sitting in the press box at PNC Park. There was a dribbler to the left side of the infield. And how many times had I seen that ball kind of dribble and Pedro Alvarez pick it up and throw it in the Allegheny River, or Colin Moran have it come thudding off his glove and roll down the line, or just some bad thing happen. But Cabrine charged the play. The shortstop kind of came in a little bit, but Cabrine, it was going to be his ball all the way. Bare hands it, running throw on a rope directly to first base for the out. And even the people in the ballpark, not nobody, the people in the ballpark, the people in the press box were like, we've never seen this before from a Pirates infielder. That was a perfectly executed play. And that's what he's been like ever since, from day one. He just looks like a big leaguer.
His dad did that really well too. His dad was a great defensive third baseman, and of course, when the Yankees won the 96 World Series, he caught the final out famously, at least in these parts. Dog, I'm just talking about the Yankees. I'm not going after you. Okay. It's just, we're talking about Charlie Hayes. Relax, please. So you have your star. Dog, he reminds me, the juice that he's given the Pirates faithful reminds me of when David Wright came up for the Mets.
I was gonna say, when he was describing the play, I'm like, boy, I haven't seen that one in a while myself. back 2005, 2006 or so for that. Certainly didn't see that from Gourmet last night, but that was that's great, and I guess you just appreciate more too, right? Like when you don't have all those guys and don't have it all the time. Again, I sort of talk like being a Met fan in Yankee land. It's like like the Mets be like battling for 500. Like I'm in a better mood than like the Yankee fans are annoyed that they're only up by 3 games as opposed to 8, and it's not lining up for the playoff setup. I'm like, I'm just thrilled to be here in September, and I guess that's sort of part. Like you're so. You set your expectations, and then life's all about trying to beat the expectations, right? And if I guess if the franchise has beaten you down enough, and now they give you some glimmers of hope, you just get your joy from that, right? Just try and just root for the guy, and you might not get the result of the game, but maybe that guy gets 2 hits, and that's a good building block at least.
Yeah, because that's kind of where they're at this point. Is if you're going to look at that entire 26-man roster that they put out there today, probably Hayes is the only guy that is totally off limits. Everybody else you could trade him, release him, replace him, do something. But Hayes is the building block. Now they've got other guys, in the minors in the system who could be those kind of players. But at this point, it's all on young Hayes, and he's going to be shaking hands and kissing baby, well, maybe bumping elbows and kissing babies, from Blawnox to Puxatawny for the next couple of years until this club maybe gets on a firmer footing.
I'll tell you, it was funny there. The Pirate social media tweeted on after opening day. It was something like, we might not lose a game all year. And then they
Yes.
just retweeted that tweet today and said, like to the baseball gods, it was an April Fool's joke, please. And now it's like, right. It's 1-5. The run difference is -25. The Reds are 5-1. They're +31. And it's like, it happens, right? It happens in a flash. But like you said, there's a lot of things that you could root for, and then you could look at the Marlins, right? They had such a great year last year. They've started out 1-5, right? I mean, maybe the the A's, right? Playoff team 1-6. I mean, they can't. They -36. So it's not just the Pirates. The Pirates were expected maybe to do that, but as a franchise, right? So this ties into where I was going. So you have the ballpark, which is a beautiful ballpark still. I have been there, but not for a game. It was like during the middle of winter, and we drove up, and we didn't really get in much, but it was a couple of years ago, and we got to take pictures and the Clemente statue and the bridge and the whole bit. And it's so nice. I was like, oh man, I got to get out there. Then of course, like the pandemic and whatever, so I haven't been there yet. But we'll get there at some point.
Road
But
trip.
here's my path for the Pirates, Rob, and you tell me if I'm insane or I'm crazy. There's a team out in San Diego that also has a great park. There's a team out in San Diego that also has a young star who's a little, maybe he's actually a little younger than your star, but he's a little ahead on the track.
Yeah.
And that team is the San Diego Padres, and that player is Fernando Tatis Jr. And the Pirates, and the Padres, you would kind of group them together because in terms of like the market, yeah, it's California, whatever, but they're the fifth team in California, right? Basically, right? And all of a sudden, one day, they opened up the checkbook for Manny Machado, and at the time, we're all looking at each other like, why are you guys bothering? And then, they traded, big game James for 16-year-old Fernando Tatis or whatever it was. And like, this guy becomes the talk of baseball. And they say, okay, you know what? We're going to push some chips into the middle of the table here. We're going to go get Blake Snell. We're going to get Yu Darvish. And all of a sudden, they're going to challenge the Dodgers here, whether they get successful or not. They've won already because they're the buzz of the league.
Yeah.
So is that the mode for the Pirates, or can the Padres do it because it's Southern California and it's San Diego and, the gas lamp district? I mean, but Pittsburgh's a charming place. It's a city with the best people in the country. I mean, and it's a winning town, right? And other sports, it's a winning town. It's loaded with winners and wins and great people. So is that, can they go on the Padre plan here? Can Brian Hayes and this administration that they have from top to bottom, from ownership through management, try to follow that plan and make them into, Padres East?
I don't see, I remember the year that Machado signed, and because the Pirates, people always ask me, hey, the Pirates going to go win on Machado? And I'd say, well, I don't think so. But then after the deal went down, we were in an interview with the chairman of the club, Bob Nutting, and I remember asking him, were you guys, did you ever give thought to signing a player of the caliber of Machado, or making a bid on Machado this year? You guys could use him at third or short, anywhere. And the answer, I forget the exact wording of it, but it was just like, no, flat out. We never even considered it. He was not on our radar. And that's just not the business model for this club. The business model is a bunch of guys in their mid-20s get to the majors and all click in that one at the same time in a season. And if we get to the All-Star break and you're hanging around a couple of back, a couple ahead, then the GM will be allowed to go out if he has any money left in his budget. Because once Mr. Nutting sets the budget at the start of the year, that's the budget. You're not going to have a cookie sale or a bake sale to try to raise some more dollars. That's your budget. And if it's gone, it's gone. So you're going to spend judiciously in the spring and put a few, acorns aside for that July 31st deadline. And that's when you get a complimentary player or two, not a Yu Darvish, not, something of that caliber. And then you hope all of that kind of clicks. That was the plan, the business model that Neil Huntington was tasked to follow, and he made it work kind of for 3 years when they got that wild card bid, and one of the years that got them into an actual playoff series, and they lost in 5 to the Cardinals, and then the next 2 years they were one and done, and that in 2015 they won 98 games. Pirates won 98 games in 2015, and there was some talent there. There was a rotation there. There was, they still had Andrew McCutchen, who, even though he was starting to slip a little bit, was still Andrew freaking McCutchen. And the ownership did not add on. They subtracted. And that was the last time the Pirates have really sniffed a wild card here or any kind of playoff postseason berth. And fans here noticed that. And they still remember it. And it's going to be very difficult, even though the business model hasn't changed. There's a new front office, Ben Cherington. I really like what he's doing, and that the trades he's making, he's going after higher end guys who could, they could, if they click, man, you could have a big time talent, but they could also crash and burn, and you're left with nothing. As opposed to at the end there, like Huntington, trades Garrett Cole for 4 or 5 guys who are close to the majors, and none of them is really a sexy talent. They're just kind of guys to fill spots on the roster to a degree. So it's a little bit of a different change in philosophy in terms of what kind of minor leaguer, what kind of yield they're going after in trades, but the business model is the same. And I don't think that's going to change. We'll see. I would be that he could, Bob Nutting could prove me wrong tomorrow. Won't happen, but maybe in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, maybe. And then I'll have to eat some crow on this, but I just don't see the business model changing. And I still see it, continuing to be a real struggle for this club.
We have a little ace up our sleeve, and it's that Dawg is a big financial guy, and he understands like big numbers and how all this stuff can work. And we've made him over the last year apply a lot of that knowledge formally to baseball. So Dawg, what's your thought on the that approach? And do you think the Pirates can become a Padres type approach and make that work?
It's tough. I mean, like Rob was saying, I mean, the stars kind of aligned in this sort of 2014, 2015 timeframe, right? That they could go out and peak on there. And we sort of talked before, like, the difference between like the big market and the small market teams, right? Is that like, you can go and sign you can go sign a big free agent, and then B, and this is probably, kind of what hits the Pirates a little bit more. It's like, if that guy doesn't hit or, doesn't, produce 100% of what you expected, you can still go get another guy like a year or two. And that's the problem. Like the small market teams like this, like you don't have the resiliency of that bigger budget to make that quote unquote mistake, or a guy gets injured or something like that. I'm like, that's it. I mean, you're hamstrung for 3 or 4 years until your next crop of young guys who are pretty good at developing, till they come together again. And that's the real trick, I think, of those teams. And it's, in terms of investing, right? At some point, being the low cost franchise and trying, get lightning in a bottle occasionally, do you have to, like we would say, you have to spend some money to make some money at some point, right? Like you need to spend some money to get yourself up into that San Diego, up into, some of these other markets atmosphere, and then start to get that sort of premium valuation. I mean, like you're saying, I mean, Pittsburgh's a tremendous town right now. I mean, it could support a solid team. I mean, it's not, economically hurting at this point. It's a great city right now. Maybe let's throw one over to Rob. Do we we've talked about the cap all the time, and we sort of talked a little bit over the summer, like me and Riz on it. Do you need a floor?
You better have
Salary and say, you know what, at some point, hey, you know what, if you're going to be in this league, you've got to at least give and to be a competitive franchise, you need to spend X amount in order to get parity within the league. Otherwise, you're a feeder system.
That's that's kind of what I've always thought is, if you're going to buy a big league baseball team, going in what the costs are, how much big league players cost, and how much you can charge for a big league ticket to see a big league team. All these things, and that's why it's a little ownership hasn't cried poor here, hasn't but more and more lately they've been talking about how the economics are tilted against us, even though the Pirates voted yes on the last CBA. Who set up this whole system. They could have abstained or whatever, but they didn't. They voted yes. And it's one thing to have a small budget, but to have it's 2021 and you have a $40 million payroll. It's just I don't even know what's the average this year in Major League Baseball, about 120 maybe.
Yeah, something like that.
Somewhere in that neighborhood. I mean, and you're still charging big league ticket prices, and then
in that upper, atmosphere, right, of hitting the cap or whatnot, right? I mean, that's a whole nother level step up in there. But even if it's half the cap, even if it's half the luxury tax cap of like a minimum, I'm like, that still seems like you could still play cheaper along the way and then give yourself room to add within it. But yeah, I mean, that's a player, right? I mean, Trevor's more than that's just not right for baseball, in my opinion. I mean, it's sick. It's kind of sick on both ends, frankly. But it's I said, if I was the fan, I'm like, it's just not fair. Like, why does my team not have a chance?
Yeah, and I guess it's and it comes down to what you want. Some fans are happy just seeing a big league ball game. That's great. I have no problem. I'm not a guy. I don't want to tell people how to spend their money or things like that. But some people are just happy going to the ballpark, and it's a Saturday afternoon, and maybe I'll watch an inning while I'm here. But probably I'll wander around and talk to friends and have some fries and get a beer. Other people want nothing less than a World Series title for the team, and that's fine too. And it's okay to be obsessed on either end, or not obsessed, maybe. Yeah. But if you're going to charge big league prices, you have to put a big league product on the field. Yeah. So I agree with you. Floor, if you're going to have a cap, if you're going to cap the amount that these players can earn, in a matter of speaking, then you got to have a floor. And and maybe you want to give some thought then to now this is open a whole nother can of worms. But if you're going to cap essentially the players' earnings, what about the management's earnings? Are those unabated? I don't know. Can you do that in good conscience? I mean, it's the free enterprise.
You're not going to vote in good conscience. My friend Stephen A. Cohen too on Twitter is not going to like it. Hey, wait a minute.
So it's a complex issue, and it's not a fair issue. And I'm not saying I kind of hate the idea. I've always at the core of it, I don't like the idea of a salary cap, just because I don't know if you necessarily have to have a generic even playing field. Is if one guy wants to win more and can do it by spending whatever he wants, well, then go for it. Do that. It's America. But so I hate I hate putting feathers on. I hate taking a bunch of the same teams and seeing which one of them has the most luck, most health, or whatever. It's part of it, but I don't know. I hate restrictors is what it is.
Well, it's interesting because it does seem to work in the other sports. And baseball has, not had the salary cap, and it's worked well for baseball too. So I think it could work well either way. But I guess maybe there's, at some point, maybe there becomes a point of diminishing returns where, it's just too hard for the lesser teams to ever climb that ladder
Yeah.
unless they can just, put in more capital or kind of hit the lottery on a bunch of these young picks, and have the young pitchers that you pick, avoid injury, and hit their peaks at the same time. I mean, it's really a crapshoot. But
Yeah.
in the other sports, it does work, and it comes down to a lot of times like which franchises are managed the best, who manages the cap the best, plus who manages their the players in the locker room and all this other stuff. And we see teams in like the Red Wings in hockey were so good for so long, and eventually, the wheels came off. The Penguins have been great, pretty much since Crosby walked through the door, and then you had Malkin. So they're always there. I mean, no matter how many guys they lose, they had coaching changes and everything, GM changes. They still manage to keep themselves in the mix. And in football, obviously, Pittsburgh is a flagship town, whereas in baseball, it used to be like the Pittsburgh of my youth was "We Are Family." I used the hashtag, pitching this thing before on Diamond Diehards on Twitter. The the yellow uniforms. It's all, I'm old. Every color's the same. Purple's a flavor to Homer Simpson. So,
The lumber company.
the lumber company, the square round cylindrical hats, Kent Tucolvy, Pops, the Cobra. I mean, all this, that's the playing the Orioles. I mean, this is like the Pittsburgh of my youth. I'm doing Mike Easler's batting stance, like, even though I'm right-handed. I mean, that's to people of our ilk and our age, like, we remember Pittsburgh as being a flagship baseball town, and it just, it had that resurgence there with Bonds, Bonilla, Drebeck. We had that little blink, like you said, if in the end of the Kutch years, and now we're back to looking at 20 out of the last 24 years have been kind of garbage, and there doesn't seem to be much on the horizon. But let's talk about like last year into this year, Rob, and let's try to focus a little bit on some of the positives. For the Athletic, did you notice last year that your I mean, I guess you don't have readership numbers, but like you would have your fan interaction, right? Like, you can tell where, sometimes your fans are more interactive, and they're interested in stuff that you're writing. You're trying to write through dead spots. Then you finally get games. Like, we saw the same thing, Dawg and I doing the podcast.
Yeah.
One day we're talking about baseball movies, and then the next day we're on a Friday night while there's games on, and it's a totally different experience. How was it last year, getting through that, and tell the people a little bit about, we talked about Cabrian Hayes, but who else is there for the Pirates that you like, that has a good prospect to turn this thing around?
I'll start with the first part. Getting through last year, there was a lot of remember when pieces, that kind of stuff, and you're right. It was difficult because we saw after spring training was shut down, there was I don't want to say an exodus, but people had other things to worry about, and rightly so, and didn't just weren't willing to sit down and read some baseball yarns, it seemed. And after about a couple of months, it started to abate a little bit, and I was able to do some stories. Talk to Richie Hebner one day, about driving the hearse and his spare, in his off time and stuff like that. And it gets you through the season, and then you get into the off season. And for the Pirates, I expected they would do a few things roster wise this winter, and they ended up doing a lot more than I expected. Trading Musgrove and Tyone and Josh Bell on Christmas Eve. So lots of stuff to write about then. And those moves, have created a lot of, I guess it's a lot of what the fans are looking toward now. And it's kind of been always the way it is with the Pirates, is when you cover the Pirates, you have to know who's in the farm system, and you end up writing a good deal about them. I remember one year, we were in Yankee Stadium, as a matter of fact, covering an interleague series there. And the Pirates called up Masumi Kawata, a Japanese pitcher who had been great in Japan, was a legend there, always wanted to pitch in the U.S. and the Pirates signed him because he was essentially at the end of his line, at the end of the line career-wise. They brought him up from the minors to pitch after it, and then somebody got injured. And I remember talking to a couple of the other Pirates writers about, well, they take Kawada out of the rotation at Indy, at AAA Indianapolis, and who do we think they're going to put in the rotation there? And would they bring up this guy from AA Altoona to take that spot? Or maybe this guy's a better guy. And one of the Yankees writers, I forget who it was, wanders over me and says, I couldn't even tell you who's in the Yankees AA rotation because we don't care. We're probably never going to see him because we'll trade him to get somebody better, or they'll just sign somebody better. So he was just amazed. But that's, that kind of how the way it is when you approach covering the Pirates is you're not just writing about the 26 guys who'll be on the field at PNC Park tomorrow and the dugout and everything. You're writing about more than just the 40-man. You're spanning the entire minor league system. Maybe a little bit easier now. MLB has whacked a couple of those teams, unfortunately. Fewer names to go through, but we saw a lot of those guys in spring training this year because, in part, because there was no minor league system last year. The management wants to get a look at some of these guys that they have. Miguel Yajure, Leover Piguero, the guy who came in the Starling Marte trade, shortstop. Beishi Hwan, Korean shortstop who was with the Braves and then was taken away from the Braves after they kind of maybe bent the rules with their international signings a little bit, and he wound up with the Pirates. These are the guys, when you talk to Pirates fans about, do they have any hope and where they think things are going, these are the kind of guys that people point to more often than not as to, I can't wait to see, Piguero or Bay. Nick Gonzalez, last year's first-round draft pick, was in spring camp this year in big league camp. He seems to be on a fast track, and he could be here in a couple of years. So really, when you start talking about what the kind of players that you get excited about if you're a Pirates fan, those are the guys that you're really aiming toward.
Now, they don't want to start the clock on these guys because and that's the quandary, right? Like they don't really probably have guys that are better. So you're like, well, just put them up there, let them learn at the big league level. But they don't want to do that because so theoretically, if you're a fan of the Pirates minor league teams, you might have a better shot at getting a title than the major league team, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's I'm probably I'm looking forward to when they crank up the minor league season again, and hopefully let people into the ballparks there. That I'm looking forward to going out to Indy or Altoona is just a 2-hour drive from here, the AA club, and seeing how these guys kind of fit. How they're going to be placed after not playing for a year, or some cases more than a year. Is Cherington going to be aggressive with his placements of some of these guys and maybe start them at high A or double A after such a long layoff? How is he going to stack up rotations? How are things going to line up? And you're right too. You don't want to just bring up. I get a lot of that sometimes. Well, let's just bring up the kids. Play the kids. Bring up the kids. Well, one, that can be bad because I remember, in the era when Sammy Khalifa and some of those guys, when the Pirates brought them up to learn at the big league level, that didn't work out very well because it's not really learning. It's just like dodging bullets constantly, and it ends up not having a very happy ending. So I've never been a fan of, play the kids at the big league level and let them learn here, bring them up when they're ready. But you're right too. You have to be judicious with that because I don't know if you're Ben Cherington, you don't want to have your core all get there the same year, because then they're all going to leave the same year. You want to have at least a little bit of staggering going on, so you can try to extend your window as long as you can.
And you don't have necessarily the benefit, like you said, of like a year last year of seeing these guys in the minor league. So it's makes it, it sort of feels like the deck is stacked even a little bit more against you. But on the good side, you talked about the 98 win season in 2015. And then we talked about, that was the same year the Royals won. And I was making my joke about the Royals and the Pirates. Oh, it wasn't a joke. It was an actual thing. But like I was being sort of lighthearted about it. But now the Royals have seemed to start, I don't know if they're ready this year, but they definitely have a lot of guys that you're looking at and you're saying, okay, I could see it, probably it's not going to be this year, but there's definitely there's very clear signs that they're on the come. And, it's that same time period, and that same time period, the Pirates don't look like they're, anywhere near that point yet. And, then you got to start mixing in, well, look what the Astros did when they lost, profusely, and they really bottomed out the plane, right? I mean, they crashed and burnt some more after they crashed. When you thought there wasn't anything left to crash, they crashed it a little more. And, then George Springer pops up on Sports Illustrated and becomes Back to the Future. Right.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we talked about the current Pirates enough. Let's talk about the best 20 moments in PNC Bank history, baby. Let's get on it. So you do this feature. Now, it sort of struck me that, you probably got extra good at doing some of these kind of features like you were talking about last year when there was nothing to write about, but it's poignant now because this is the time period when it's happening. This is the time period you're having the 20th anniversary. So you put together the 20 moments. So go check it out at The Athletic. I've had my subscription now, I think for 1.5, 2 years, whatever. Well worth the money. I know you were just running a special, right? If hopefully people are following you and they jumped in. It's really, I mean, honestly, even if you just follow one team, it's completely worth, like it's just for the Devils stuff, for the New Jersey Devils stuff. It's worth it even just for that. And then all the other stuff I get is like gravy. So when I want to see Rob's stuff, I go in there and it makes it, easy for show prep. And, I found a couple of interesting things there that, otherwise I wouldn't have known. So I was glad for that. So there's your pitch. There's your push. Definitely The Athletic is a worthy subscription among, the subscriptions that you could put out there these days. But, it kind of, I was thinking, I'm like, man, he probably really would have loved to have been able to run this feature in like August, right around like the 90th loss. You're like, we could it's not September yet. We're not calling anybody up yet. And we have a few weeks to go here. Let's do the top 20, but now's the time. And I was wondering how much flack and scrutiny you got for did you have any misses in there? Do you think you nailed it? I thought you nailed them pretty good, but I'm not the expert. I did remember, for a guy that's not following the Pirates every day, I was surprised at how many I remembered.
Let me jump out
on. Yeah,
there were a couple. I mean, there were the one I probably took the most heat for was number 20, the back-to-back walk-off wins against the Cardinals in the middle of the 2015 season. And everybody was like, oh, that's one of my, 3 or 4 best ever memories. And, it was incredible. And McCutcheon hit a walk-off homer in one of them. And it was, everybody's, you have your own criteria. I didn't really have a hard and fast, check off this box and this box. I kind of like, it was an important win. Or an important event? Was it a historic event or unusual event or meaningful, emotional? What did did it get a lot of fame? There were a couple things, that maybe people didn't remember or kind of wondered, well, like Garrett Jones's home run into the river. People were like, wow, that was number 10. I mean, it was just a home run. Cutcheon a walk-off home run to beat somebody. This was just a home run in a game they won, but it was no big. Yeah, but it's, he hit a ball into the river.
And he still has the ball.
And it was funny because I called him up to talk about it, and I was watching the video, and I said, gee, you got to pull up the video on this here, G. And he does, and he goes, hey, and I said, you see it there finally. There was that guy on the bicycle, riding down the concourse on the Riverwalk. The ball went right over his head into the river.
It's really funny.
I'm like, dude, you could have killed that guy, Yeah, wow, funny how things work out. I'm like, yeah, but it's just something like that, quirky and different. At the end of the day, I think obviously number one is the Cueto moment. That was the 2013 wild card game. I had been to Pirates playoff games, in 90, 91, 92, when they had, Bonds and Bonilla and Van Slyke and Draybeck and Smiley, just monsters out there. And those teams, I don't want to talk about the 92. Don't even go there on the 92 game against Atlanta. But, so and I grew up, I was born in 65. So I grew up with the 71 Pirates and the 79 Pirates. So I have seen emotional, meaningful, dramatic games before. We don't have any of those at PNC Park, unless you kind of roll a wild card win, but that's still going to be the apex of, the other 19, you could probably shake them up and put them in any order you want. And that's kind of what I like about it, is because everyone is going to mean a little more, maybe to a guy who was sitting at the ballpark that day, those back-to-back, walk-off wins against the Cardinals. And maybe he was there and he was, 18 years old and he had his girlfriend and it was the best weekend of his life or something. I don't know. That's going to mean more to you. And that's fine. That's great. I was just trying to, my thing more so was just, I'm going to put these moments out here and, but unabashedly tug at your heartstrings on it.
The one I love is the Rob Makoviak one where he has the baby and then he hits the walk off and, he was that was he was a solid player. I mean, that is the apex of his baseball career. What a moment. I mean, I remember that one. Like I was watching that one again, because you had the video in there, I think, of that one too, right? And the call, everything was just great.
Oh yeah,
that one, I love that one.
And one of my favorite PNC Park memories. I wasn't even at PNC Park that day. I was in Pittsburgh. I was a couple of miles away at Oakland at McGee Women's Hospital. It was a Sunday afternoon, and my first daughter was being born. And we were in the birthing suite or whatever, and they have a TV there. And my wife's in the next room listening, and she's probably going to crack up here. But the TV was on, and she's going through the process, and it wasn't a quick. It was it was a few hours involved of pushing and whatnot. And I think it was CNN was on, or some news channel, and you see, the news cycle about 18 times, and my wife finally just said, turn that channel off. So I just picked up the remote and just hit the button once and put the remote down. Well, it was the Pirates, whatever the network was that carried the Pirates back then. And there was a game in the afternoon, Turner Ward, right as my daughter's being born, and they show us my daughter, and I hear at the same time Turner Ward is hitting a game-tying home run. And I thought, yeah, wow, pretty incredible. They went on to lose the game, of course, because it's still the Pirates. But for me,
otherwise you'd have to name her Turner.
Yeah.
So for me, that's one of my favorite memories, just because it was a home game day that day and everything, and then it was neat. But that's obviously not going to be in my top 20 because most people would see that, what the hell are you talking about? But everybody brings their own memories to it, and that's what I like about it. That's why the game exists. That's why at the end of the day, people are always going to go.
Dog, I think Rob inadvertently started us on Diehard Dads.
Oh.
Wow, Xavier Rizzo crushing that one. He was on the ball with the charge. So yeah, Rob, you just did Diehard Dads without even thinking of it.
That was like an all-time Diehard Dads.
Yeah,
that's in the top 20 already.
top 20 Diehard Dad moments.
Yeah.
I don't even think, Dog, I don't even think we have to do the segment. I think Rob just did it for us.
I'm not going to touch it. How do you follow that?
I'm not. I'm doing a George Costanza. I'm out. I might just walk out into the ether of this of this live stream. Rob, I think we could go on all night with you. You just you come on here. You don't know us from anything, and you fit like a glove. We appreciate it. Our sort of intro of course, it's always Jerry Milani, right? Like he's the
Oh
linchpin
yeah.
for Diehards. But so he gets you involved. He gets us involved in the Stratomatic Elite Media Experts League, and it's your Pirates giving my Cardinals hell for a while.
Yeah, I don't know how we did that, man, because it was tough putting that lineup together. There was some spots, not a lot to choose from, especially pitching wise. Oy.
Yeah, but you hung pretty tough, and Dawg got to pick his actual team, the Mets. I was as a Yankee fan, I'm like, oh, Sweeney Murdy from WFAN's in league. I guess I'm not getting the Yankees.
Yeah.
Forget about that. So I hit the books and got the Cardinals. I said I think I'm gonna go Cardinals because we've talked a lot of Cardinals. We have a lot of Cardinal Nation. I think that's checked us out. So I adopted the Cardinals. And just by the time you're listening to this, if you're listening or watching, the game 7 of the final might be played, and it's my Cardinals against Joe Lemaire's Red Sox. Game 7 for a winner take all game. I have the late Darryl Kyle against Derek Lowe, who, like Gonzaga, is trying to complete an undefeated season in an ultimate game. So that's our little push for the next show. Joe Lemaire will join us around, I think, in the 5 o'clock hour on Thursday. So if you're checking us out now and you want to check that show out, we're going to have Joe on from the great senior writer from sporttechie.com, and you've seen him on the MLB Network. And Rob, you've been on the MLB Network before too, right?
Yeah, I've done some work for them in the past. A lot of fun. I remember the first time I ever did Mad Dog's show on there. I didn't realize that he's like that 24/7. I thought I thought he might be a little more subdued, but he'd come on, Rob, how you doing? I'm like, oh, okay. So, this was just the chit chat before the segment began. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
The fact that I got to bring a hula stick and put it in the back of a television station in a hotel room in godforsaken Atlanta is absolutely ridiculous. Okay, wow.
We can't go 2 episodes on Diamond Diehards without Riz doing his Mad Dog impression.
That's polished. I am miking the Mad Dog from like day 1 all the way still to today. I listen to Mad Dog every day. So that is imitation is the highest form of flattery, right? There you go.
Yeah.
But I made producer Xavier Rizzo crack. He doesn't crack up for anything, but he cracked up for that because I make him hear that spot all the time. So you've been on High Heat. That's now they've tried to steal Riz and the dog from us because Alana, no relation that I know of Rizzo with Mad Dog. But I will say Jeff, the dog Healy, and this Riz have been together since like 87, 88. So we're gonna call Riz and the dog dibs on that.
I was on the New York Airways before the dog.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. I think he got WMCA. So yeah.
All right, that's fair enough. Yeah, before he was on a fan. Yeah.
I think he gets you before the fan. Yes, you
it's
did.
Pretty close. Pretty close.
You made there. WFUV before you made the fan. I think. So that's we'll give it to you. We'll give it to you either way. Rob, anything else to push? The Athletic, find them there. The Twitter feed. Go. It's
at Rob Biertempfel. Yeah. If you're from the old country, it's easy to spell. If you're not, I apologize. But but yeah, no, that's it. It's just looking forward to getting through the season, and it's gonna be interesting, maybe painful at times, like the past 2 games. But you can always, that's what I like about ball, is you can always find something good to write about, at least, or give people some sense of what might be coming in a year or 2 or 4 or 5.
Hey, but when you get there,
it's
gonna feel good.
Yes, indeed, it will.
You're gonna. I sense that you're gonna get there. I don't know how. I don't know when. Probably you're gonna beat the Mets in the NLCS at some point, just to annoy the dog.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah. They'll be there. So that was really great. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to roping you into the mix here and interacting you a little with you a little bit, maybe on Twitter or something like that. which
Perfect.
is right. Rob said where you could find him. You could find us. Well, it's really me. I've decided to just take over and reveal that it's me that's tweeting under at Diamond Diehards. It's just easier because we we're doing as Dawg says, Twitter game's strong, but it hasn't we haven't actually gotten on a roll yet with Twitter. So it's me doing the Diamond Diehards Twitter. Xavier Rizzo, producer, does have access to it, but he's usually just tweeting out show links and stuff like that when it comes up. And you can follow the dog at Jeff Healy 8. That's the number 8. Go check us out. I wrote it down. It's so many places now. I wrote it down. Notebook, old school, old reporter. It's let's see. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, TikTok, LinkedIn. We're there. We're everywhere. We're everywhere. We're everywhere. Apple Podcasts / iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get podcasts. We're there. Check us out at diamonddiehards.com. We're there. We're all set up to just explode at some point. And when we do that, then Rob Biertempfel can say he knew us when.
Yeah,
so,
right.
So that's right. I think so. We got that going for us.
We're kind of like the Pirates of podcasts right now. We're trying to punch over our weight right now.
Yeah,
we're getting there. We're sitting around foundation solid.
We got a plan in place. We're not throwing a lot. We're not throwing a lot of money at the plan.
Yeah.
Right now,
the budget's tight.
Yeah.
Producer Xavier is basically Cabrian Hayes right now. He's making all the videos happen. Right now he's frantically Googling Cabrian Hayes. So okay, that's gonna do it from here, and we will wrap it up there. So we thank you for checking us out on Diamond Diehards, the Pirate Nation, the Steel City edition, our first Steel City edition of Diamond Diehard. So that's going to do it for Rob Biertempfel, our guest, and for the dog, Jeff Healy. This is Joe Rizzo. Diamond Diehards is out.